So I hear you're now working at a clinic in some small village, taking it easy. In a tiny clinic like that, I bet you can't really do much. You're a doctor but can't save anyone, can you? The person I ran into at the university hospital I went to for reasons was a colleague from my student days. He talked to me as he was looking down on me. I work as a doctor in a clinic in a small village with a population of about 100 people. Indeed, I didn't have any great achievements, and he was probably better than me in skills. But apparently, he didn't know yet. Why I, who was like that, am now here at this university hospital instead of the clinic. And how our relationship will change in the future. My name is John Baker. I'm a workaholic, and before I knew it, I was in my mid-40s and still single. Ever since I was young, I was always sickly and weak. Especially my bronchi. I often had asthma attacks at the change of seasons and had to be hospitalized when it got severe. Being hospitalized meant I couldn't go to school or play. It was nothing but a painful time for me. But the doctor in charge during my hospital stays was a kind and very cool man. Just by wearing a Johnson coat and using a stethoscope for examinations, he quickly understood my condition. It felt like magic, and I was always in better health after being discharged. Even as a child, I always admired him and wanted to become a doctor like him one day, to save children who were suffering and lonely. As I grew older, my physique improved, and naturally, I had fewer asthma attacks. Swimming, which I started at my parents' suggestion in elementary school, seemed to be good for building strength, even though I often missed it due to catching colds at first. By middle school, I had grown enough to win at the county championship. The more I practiced swimming, the more I enjoyed the results, and I became immersed in it. But even as I dedicated myself to swimming, my dream never changed. When I became a high schooler, I confessed my dream of becoming a doctor to my parents and decided to seriously aim for medical school. They supported me, and I was motivated in my studies. However, a classmate named Michael Johnson often made sarcastic comments and picked on me. "Hey you! What? That score on the last test, wasn't it kind of strange? What do you mean? I mean, there's no way you could score that high." I was surprised when he directly said that after I did well on a regular test. The only thing in common with Michael was that we were in the same class. I didn't really have much to do with him, honestly. We had barely even spoken a few times. Despite that, Michael seemed to have something against me for some reason, and when I did well on a test, he would say things like, "Did you cheat?" behind my back, or if I did well in a swimming competition, he would spread false rumors among my teammates to isolate me in the swim team. Luckily, my teammates knew me well, so nothing came of it, but I couldn't understand why he was doing this. I thought about asking him why, but if he didn't like me and was harassing me for that reason, it could have just made him angrier, so I decided to ignore it. No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't think of a reason for him to dislike me, and since he almost messed up my social life, I had no good impressions of Michael. But since it was clear he didn't like me, I made sure to keep my distance. Despite some issues with Michael, I managed to balance swimming and studying and was accepted into a private medical school. It was the university with the hospital I had been admitted to when I was young, and when I decided to become a doctor, I had no hesitation in choosing this university as my first choice. All my hard work paid off, and I passed the entrance exam on my first try, celebrating with tears of joy with my parents. But I was utterly surprised when I saw Michael on campus during enrollment. I had no idea he was also aiming to be a doctor, and he clearly showed his distaste when he realized I was there. However, unlike in high school, I don't think he said anything behind my back. Maybe he was too busy with the much harder studies compared to high school. Michael seemed to be very kind to everyone else in our class. "Michael, can I ask you something?" "What's up?" "I'll help if I can." "Thanks. It's about this question here. His grades were top of the class, and was known as diligent and talented. If anyone had questions about their studies, they'd go to Michael, who became a reliable figure for everyone. Yet, he still glared at me and made sarcastic remarks whenever we met. "Why are you even in mid-school? Did you cheat to get in?" When he muttered that to me in a voice only I could hear as we passed each other, I finally reached my breaking point. "Have I done something to you?" "What?" "I don't know why you dislike me so much, but if I've done something to upset you, I'll apologize. Please tell me, because it's hard not knowing what I did wrong." "Huh? What? If you have something to say or something you don't like, why not say it to my face? It's cowardly to do it as we pass by. And please stop spreading strange rumors. We're not kids anymore, and it's honestly annoying." Michael seemed surprised by my response, glared at me silently for a moment, then walked away. One day, while I had a free period at university, I was on my way to see a professor when I ran into my childhood doctor. "Are you Dr. Johnson?" "You are." "It's you, Dr. Johnson. I'm John. You might not remember me, but I was frequently sick as a child and you took care of me." "John, wow, it's been a while. You look well, and that's a relief. So, why are you here?" "I'm studying to be a doctor at this university. I want to be like you." "Really? I can't express how happy I am. You've grown up so well, and to think you recognized me so quickly, I'm really touched." Dr. Johnson, who seemed deeply moved, told me he was now the head doctor of the university hospital. "The head doctor? That's right. Doesn't really suit me, does it?" "Yes, it does. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were the head doctor and spoke too casually." "Don't worry about it. It's been a long time since someone looked at me with such genuine eyes. Thank you." I hadn't been hospitalized since my health improved, so I was surprised and couldn't hide it when I learned Dr. Johnson had become the head doctor. "What brings you here today, Dr. Johnson?" "Oh, I was just heading back from speaking with a professor." "I see." As we were chatting, I heard footsteps from behind and a familiar voice saying, "What are you doing here?" I turned around and saw Michael. I thought he came to make another sarcastic remark to me, but his gaze was not on me but on Dr. Johnson in front of me. "Michael, what's up? Did you need something from me?" Dr. Johnson called Michael by his first name in a friendly manner, and I was surprised to realize they knew each other. As if I just had something to discuss with the professor. "Hey, Michael. Move, you're in the way." Michael deliberately bumped into my shoulder as he passed and ignored Dr. Johnson calling after him. As we watched him leave, Dr. Johnson unexpectedly said, "Sorry about that. Did he hurt you? My son can be a bit of trouble." "Your son, Michael is." Did you forget my last name? Your name, oh." I never connected the dots that they were father and son, despite sharing the same surname. Michael used to be a much more expressive kid. He always smiled brightly at me, but at some point, he started behaving like that towards me. I think he felt lonely because I was always busy with work and couldn't give him much attention. Dr. Johnson said this while looking as if he was still seeing Michael's retreating figure, his eyes filled with kindness. His expression was a mix of sadness and melancholy. Even though he wasn't crying, it somehow looked like he was. That expression stayed with me. Years passed, and we all successfully passed our national exams. I officially became a licensed doctor. When choosing where to work, I, having no particular preference, ended up in a remote hospital that no one else wanted to go to. After a few years of training there, I moved to a clinic in a small village with about 100 residents, which have been without a doctor for a long time. The village, mainly populated by elderly people, was serene, surrounded by the sea and mountains. The air was fresh, and the villagers seemed to live by helping each other. I arrived at the small clinic in the village, a complete stranger and inexperienced. I was an outsider, fresh out of training, and not yet confident enough to proudly call myself a doctor. I feared being disliked or told to leave because I wasn't skilled enough. But despite these fears, the villagers welcomed me warmly. "We are lucky to have you, Dr. Baker. Thank you so much for coming to our little village." I get nervous with young doctors. The village elders treated me like their own grandchild. Within a few days, I began to match faces with names and enjoyed my days there. When I asked how they managed when they got sick, they said they had to travel at least an hour to the nearest large town, which was quite a hardship. "That's why we are so grateful you came to this village. It might be inconvenient here, but we appreciate your help." "The pleasure is mine. I look forward working here." However, in the village, there were no nurses and I was the only doctor. Not knowing when or what kind of situations I'd be called out for, and to provide the best possible treatment with limited facilities, was more challenging than I could have imagined. There were many villagers with chronic illnesses, and despite my best efforts, there were times I couldn't save them, which brought me immense sadness and regret. But the villagers would encourage me, saying, "You're the hope to this town, and thanks to you, we feel like we could live a little longer." I couldn't perform advanced treatments same as big hospitals. I couldn't even do surgeries properly on my own. So, sometimes, there were things I just couldn't handle. I had to work with hospitals in bigger towns and refer patients there when necessary. But this made me think that there must be things that can only be done in this village. Experiences I can only have here. Growth that's only possible here. I decided to grow as a doctor in this village. With that in mind, I worked tirelessly. It was one day, about 20 years after graduating from university. I was visiting the university hospital I had been admitted to as a child, on my way back from a medical conference. As I walked through the hospital, smiling at the nostalgia of my vague memories, someone approached me. "You, aren't you?" "Michael." The person who looked at me with widened eyes was Michael, who seemed a bit aged. Perhaps due to our intense work, it seemed like we both had more gray hairs. But despite being adults now, Michael quickly reverted to his disdainful expression and started with his sarcasm. "So I hear you're now working at a clinic in some small village, taking it easy." "Yeah, that's right. I'm the head of surgery at this hospital now. I've been successful in high-risk surgeries and received recognition for my achievements." "Well, that's impressive. Head of surgery, you always stood out among our peers. Well done." When I sincerely praised Michael, he seemed displeased with my response and glared at me, his tone becoming harsher. "In a small clinic like that, I bet you can't really do much. You're probably just keeping the elderly company, right? The facilities must be outdated and unusable, and you can't properly perform surgeries alone, can you? You don't have many accomplishments, do you? After all, as a doctor, you probably can't save anyone, right?" Michael, who hadn't changed a bit since those days, still looked down on me. Just as I was about to argue that his accusations were unfair, I heard a voice searching for me and stopped speaking. "Mr. Baker, I've been looking for you." The voice belonged to a female nurse who, upon spotting me, hurried over. Michael also turned his gaze toward the nurse in surprise. "Mr. Baker, I mean, Dr. Baker, the new head doctor. My name is Emily. I'm a nurse. I look forward to working with you starting today." Emily's words left Michael wide-eyed and speechless. "Hey, what did you just say?" I said, "I look forward to working with you starting today." "No, before that, what did you call him? Did you mean when I referred to him as the new head doctor, Dr. Baker? New head doctor? What are you talking about? Haven't you heard? This is Dr. Baker, who has been appointed as the new head doctor here." "Head doctor? You mean you?" Michael stared at me in disbelief. I nodded, confirming, "Actually, that's right," leaving him at a loss for words. Well, actually, I had been working at a hospital affiliated with this university. My assignment to the small village was also in the form of a dispatch from the university. My contribution to regional medical development was recognized, and I was invited to become the head doctor. The clinic in the village already had a successor lined up, and we have been working together for about 3 months, so the transition was smooth. A nurse was also going to join the clinic, which would expand the range of treatments available and save more lives. I thought Michael, working in this hospital, knew all about it, but it seemed to be news to him. It was a complex feeling, but there was nothing I could do as I had been appointed. So, Emily, was it? Did you need me for something? Oh, yes, that's right. Dr. Johnson, the current head doctor, wants you. Got it. I'll head over there right now. Thank you. As I responded to the nurse, Michael glared at me and walked away. Hello, it's John. Please, come in. Thank you. Entering the head doctor's office, there was Dr. Johnson. John, it's been a while. I'm sorry to have called you back here so suddenly. No, I am honored to be appointed to such a distinguished position. I believe you'll do well. Thank you. Dr. Johnson, being of advanced age, was feeling a decline in his strength. He seems to be getting sick more often, and his absences from work have been increasing. For this reason, he told me he plans to retire from the field soon and invited me to take over. I was thrilled to hear the words from the doctor I've always admired, but Dr. Johnson's son is Michael. He told me he is the head of surgery, and his accomplishments are indeed remarkable. Wouldn't it make more sense for his son to take over? I thought, and so I asked, I'm sorry if this sounds rude, but why did you choose me over your son? Dr. Johnson quietly shook his head. My son, Michael, as his father, it may sound strange for me to say this, but I believe he is outstanding as a surgeon. Then, shouldn't he be the one to become the head doctor? His skills are great and I rely on him. He's trusted by everyone. I think he's fit for the role, and I know he would do well as the hospital director. Then why not? I still want him to continue working hard to save lives on the front lines. Dr. Johnson, as the head doctor, once the role is taken, it's difficult to be involved on the front line with patients. It's important to care for the patients in front of you, but that's not enough for a head doctor. You must always have a broad perspective. In that sense, you, who have demonstrated your skills in various places, is the right person for the job. You understand the feelings of patients, which is important for both doctors and patients. I'm honored. I'm sorry if this sounds rude, but have you discussed this with your son? Well, Dr. Johnson said with an embarrassed smile. When I tilted my head, he confessed, it's hard for us to be honest when we're face to face. We hardly have time to talk, and even if we do, Michael probably won't listen to me. That couldn't be. No, it's true. With all due respect, Dr. Johnson, by appointing me as your successor, there might be some misunderstandings. How about having an open and honest conversation with him? I'm sorry if I'm overstepping, but I believe leaving things as they are won't work. Open and honest. Yes, you're right. Dr. Johnson looked distant and smiled kindly. Then, I'll take my leave now. I know it's tough, but I'm counting on you. Thank you. It was when I was about to leave the office that it happened. I heard a groaning sound followed by a thud, and I quickly turned around. Dr. Johnson, what happened? Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson had collapsed on the floor from his chair, unconscious. I borrowed a stethoscope nearby and placed it on his chest. Judging from his heart and breathing sounds, his condition didn't seem good, and I broke out in a cold sweat. Is anyone there? Someone, come quickly. I shouted from inside the office, and the nurse who had called me earlier rushed in. What happened? Dr. Johnson collapsed. It's urgent. Call someone. No, declare code blue. Hurry. I'm on it. The nurse frantically used the intercom to relay the message. Immediately, an announcement was made over the hospital's pass system. Code blue, near the west side of the 10th floor. All available staff, please respond immediately. Code blue. A hospital's cryptic term for an emergency. Some say Dr. Blue or something similar, but our hospital uses code blue. Now, all available doctors and nurses will gather here. probably faster than searching for doctors to call him here. I soon heard footsteps, and the door to the head doctor's office opened. The first to rush in was Michael. His face was pale as he saw Dr. Johnson on the floor and ran towards me. "Hey, John, Code Blue, what's going on? It might be an acute aortic dissection. Prepare for tests immediately." "What? Get a stretcher here, now." "Yes, sir." I directed the arriving doctors and nurses for tests, and as soon as the stretcher was brought in, we began urgent procedures. The test results confirmed an acute aortic dissection, requiring immediate surgery to prevent the worst-case scenario. However, today was the day of a medical conference. Other surgeons, apart from Michael, were either attending it or already in surgeries and couldn't be called back immediately. "Michael, you're the only one I can rely on." I can't operate on my father. I don't have the confidence to save him." Michael was trembling, holding his head in his hands. I stood in front of him, holding his shoulders firmly. "Have you always approached surgery with this attitude? Just a few moments ago, you were boasting about handling high-risk cases to me. Was that a lie?" "It's not a lie, but it's different with my father." "It's not different. Whether it's your father or a child, in front of you is a patient with an aortic dissection, right? You know best what will happen if we leave him like this, don't you?" I know that, but..." "No buts. Dr. Johnson just said to me that you're a skilled surgeon. I know how capable you are too. If you can't do it, then I will. I hardly have any experience with aortic dissection surgeries." As I appealed, almost shouting, Michael seemed to awaken, his eyes regaining their focus. He shook off my hands, saying, "Don't be ridiculous. I can't leave it to you," and clenched his still slightly trembling hands. "I'll perform the surgery. We'll start an emergency operation right now. Prepare immediately." Relieved to see Michael regaining his usual demeanor, I watched as he gave instructions to the surrounding nurses. I was trying to calm myself down when I heard, "Hey, John. What's up? You, be my assistant in the surgery." "Me? If I'm not doing it, you will, right? Then at least be an assistant and watch my surgery closely." Michael said this in a dismissive tone, and I nodded, quickly getting ready. The surgery, filled with tension, ended in great success. Dr. Johnson recovered steadily. When I visited his room in the hospital, he tried to get up happily, but I stopped him just in time. "Thank you so much. I'm glad you were there. I heard you encouraged Michael. Thanks to you, it looks like I can live a little longer." "Don't mention it. There's still so much I want to learn from you. We need you to stay healthy." Haha, guess I can't kick the bucket just yet, but retirement was inevitable. "Dr. Johnson, that's not true." "No, I know my body best. I was lucky this time, but I don't know what will happen next. I know my time is limited." Dr. Johnson's smile looked somewhat sad. "Dr. Johnson, as a child, you treated me, and thanks to you, I have grown to be who I am today. You are my inspiration. I wanted to become a doctor like you, and that's what has driven me all this way." "Me, your inspiration. I never thought I'd hear such words. Hearing you say that makes my career as a doctor all the more worthwhile." While we were talking, Michael had entered the room and said bitterly, "You were always attached to my dad." I looked at Michael and suddenly had an idea. "Michael, were you jealous of me because Dr. Johnson was always with his patients?" Hitting the nail on the head, Michael turned red and denied, "No, that's not it. What are you talking about?" But it was obvious to everyone, and both I and the nurse who came to change Dr. Johnson's IV chuckled. It was just a little teasing, but it seemed to get a good reaction. Dr. Johnson was smiling happily, saying, "So it's true, so it's true." Michael, a mix of embarrassment and bitterness, admitted, "Yeah, that's right, so what? I never got to celebrate my birthdays, entrance ceremonies, or graduations with my dad. I couldn't even have a proper conversation with him, while he was always with you patients. I was jealous that he seemed to care more about his patients than his own son. I envied and hated you guys. So when I found out that one of those patients was you in high school, I was frustrated. Michael started to pour out his feelings, and Dr. Johnson listened intently, closing his eyes to catch every word. And now, you appointed him as the next head doctor. I've been by your side in this hospital all along. I thought I'd finally have time with you. And then I thought I lost that to him again. I was shocked. Michael, well, but after talking openly with my dad, I understood his true feelings. He wants me to focus on my work as a surgeon, to refine my skills. That cleared my resentment. Hearing these words, I looked at Dr. Johnson, who nodded gently. I heard that you were the one who told my dad to talk to me. I hate to admit it, but I'm grateful for this time. Thank you. Michael offered his hand, and I gladly shook it. Understanding the cause of Michael's long-standing resentment towards me was a relief. That moment marked the end of our long-standing grudges. Years have passed since then. As the head doctor, I'm involved in various daily operations. I manage this hospital, its branches across the U.S., the staff and doctors, financial aspects, and make the final decisions on patients' treatment plans. And it's only the tip of the iceberg. The list is endless. Having never studied management, there's a lot I don't know, but I'm managing with the help of my secretary. Despite preparing myself for a challenging role, actually being in this position is a daily race against time, and sometimes I regret accepting it. I remember the slower pace of life at the small village clinic and sometimes yearn to return there. But there are still areas without permanent doctors. Not only advancing medical care, but my duty also includes ensuring that existing healthcare services continue uninterrupted. Moreover, I aim to create a world where everyone can access medical care. It's important for us all to work together towards that goal. As the head doctor, I will continue to lead in dispatching doctors to rural areas. And someday, I hope to return to that village myself. That's what I thought. After Dr. Johnson's discharge, contrary to what I expected, he didn't retire but stayed at the hospital, handling tasks like health checkups that were within his capabilities. Though he had been discharged, his strength hadn't fully returned, and given his age, we couldn't predict what might happen. I've been too busy with administrative duties to work directly with patients. Saying this might sound inappropriate, but being able to examine patients, even a little, makes me happy. I want to continue being a doctor for as long as I live. It might be a burden to others, but I want to keep going a little longer. There was nothing else I could do but nod to my mentor's words. He promised not to overdo it and to prioritize his health while continuing his work as a doctor. As for Michael, he's still active as the head of surgery. He has successfully handled many challenging cases, gaining national recognition, and patients from all over the country seek his expertise. Initially overwhelmed, Michael is now earnestly striving to save every patient who trusts him. Thanks to his efforts, the hospital regularly receives thank you letters from patients who have recovered. Dr. Baker, it's almost time for the conference. Is it that time already? Thank you, let's go. After you, sir. I stood up and left the office with my secretary and headed to the conference. Even though we are all doctors, our roles vary greatly depending on our positions. But as medical professionals, our ultimate goal is to fight tirelessly to save and care for lives. We all share the same desire to help our patients. We strive daily to improve ourselves in this regard. Moving forward, I want to continue dedicating my efforts to protect people's health and save lives as a doctor. Hello, Dr. Baker. Hello, let's get started, shall we?